We're going to play all the notes and summon all the evil. It's the Technical Death Metal Edition, Metal Bass Monday. So, getting with the updates. Coming up this week, we're going to have my profile and interview of Jack Gibson from the thrash metal legends Exodus. That's going to be a really cool one. I've been really interested to talk to Jack and see about his time in the band and the changes that brought, and he's got a really great sound and an approach, so looking forward to it. That's going to be coming up, so check it out, and the return of Metal Bass Microscope, and I'll have links up for everything. And as I mentioned last time, I'm going to do it a little different because of some of the takedowns and things that are going on across YouTube. So I'll be putting pieces across a couple of different networks and things and having different editions of it, so you can get the short version or the full version or whatever you want. So trying to get it out the best I can and make sure everybody gets all the extras and specials and whatever version they want. On top of that, we did the first live stream for patrons this week, and that was awesome. I had a really good time with that. I hope everybody enjoyed it. And speaking of patrons, let's see if I can do the list, the updated one for this week, and say thanks and power through this one. I'm trying to get fast at it. Let's see if I can do it. Jared Scott, Carol Zimisinski, Stu Bennett, Ratbones, Marcus Orth, Power Surge 5000, Stephen Becker, TJ, Rob T, Bottom Dweller 5, Icky, Ryan Huggard, Kevin Toole, D-Rock, Macathu, and Chris at Deathless. Thank all of you for being patrons, for supporting the channel. It's always greatly appreciated. And I'm going to have another edition for the 30-day challenge coming up too, so keep your eye out for that on Patreon and Subscribestar. Links down below for anybody who's looking to check that out. So, with all that out of the way, let's get directly into the darkness. So, I get a lot of questions about a number of technical death metal players, and one of the big things is people are really intimidated by it, which is understandable. The stuff is called technical for a reason. But you have players in bands like Archspire gets brought up a lot, and there's a lot of incredible stuff going on. But as with any style, if you can step back from it and try and make it a little less intimidating and really analyze what's going on, you can kind of get into the center of it and demystify it, and then you've got a place to start. One of the common things that I've talked to with students and people who are just looking to get into it is that it's so fast and the notes are so random and chaotic, they don't know how to relate it to anything and don't know where to start learning it. Well, there's a few secrets going on here, and it's going to be kind of the way of demystifying it, and I'm going to link to a couple examples as we go by and let you check them out so you can see exactly what I'm talking about as these go by. But the first thing that anytime you approach a style of music is you want to try and see if you can find out what the vocabulary is. Like if you're going to play the blues, you learn the blues scale, and you know that basically everything that you're going to learn inside of it, or you're going to have to try and figure out, is going to exist inside that vocabulary, so you have a place to start. The same goes with anything. You know, classical's going to be in a certain framework, although that one's going to be much more broad. But as it turns out, there's a key at the base of technical death metal that's going to solve a lot of issues, help you transcribe the stuff, help you write the stuff, and understand the tonalities, and get it under your hands really quickly. It'll also help you fill in a lot of places where, even though the things are really rapid, it'll help you figure out what's actually going on here. Well, the big mystery at the sound of all that chaotic sounding dark music is that almost everything in technical death metal is based around the diminished scale. It's a kind of rootless scale that is just a series constantly of whole and half steps. Now, I'm going to show this to you in a minute, but really, I had a hard time finding parts that weren't diminished. And that's some place that you can kind of get a grip on what's going on, is that when you're dealing with incredibly high speed things, I find that a lot of times simpler ideas are behind most of what most players are playing at incredible speeds, because you just can't be pulling from that many sources and still be able to keep up incredibly rapid movements. And also, if you're using the same fingerings and the same positions and the same kind of go-to sounds and scale positions, you're constantly training yourself and getting better and better at it all the time, so your speed on it goes up. It's not like you're developing speed at this fingering and then this fingering and then this one. They're using a lot of the same fingerings all the time because 90% of this music is based on the full diminished scale. So they're constantly using the same fingerings and a couple of ways of approaching it that make up almost everything. So let's take a look at what I'm talking about. So here's what a full diminished scale looks like, and if you're into this type of music, you're probably going to recognize a piece of it right away. But it's an incredibly simple thing to learn because it's just the same pattern over and over. So if we start it in D here on our 3rd fret on the B string, it's going to be basically what you might look at as a minor pattern, similar to a minor scale. So 3, 5, and 6. Then you're going to go 3, 4, 6, 7. So you have this pattern. Now where your first finger would normally land, you're just going to play that same pattern again. You just keep moving it up a string and up a half step. So that's the scale. It just keeps repeating like that. Anywhere you want to start it, it's a rootless scale. It doesn't have kind of a tonal center that you return to or that resolves. It's what's called a symmetrical scale. So you can it has, because it's rootless and it doesn't really resolve, it has a really chaotic sound to it. And you're going to see that a lot in technical death metal. It's what almost all the riffs are. And the arpeggio based on this, meaning the individual notes of the chord that would fit over this scale, are basically a diagonal shape. You're going to see a lot of this type of thing where you'll notice a lot of times, and I'm going to point to the arch spire thing here in a minute, but that there's a lot of shapes where you see them playing a diagonal kind of thing, like 4, 5, 6. See how it's like the hand leans that way? That's one giveaway, if your ear isn't that developed right away, that they're playing a diminished scale. You're going to see that all over the place. That really kind of chaotic, disorienting and very dark sounding kind of progression. That is 90% of what they're doing. Like I said, look at the arch spire thing. You're going to recognize this immediately. And then what they do is play around with a lot of shapes inside of this. One of the big ones also being, you'll see a lot of this movement with the first finger, say like on the 3rd fret, and the 4th finger like on the 6th. So you're getting a minor 3rd in distance. A lot of kind of that type of thing. It's a very popular movement. You'll see a lot of that type of thing. Another place where you can see this, if we want to go a little older school, is in the Cannibal Corpse, in the instrumental, and I'll tag that one right there. You can see that basically the notes that they're using are all right inside of that diminished scale. If we look at this pattern and go starting on the 2nd fret, if you look at that initial riff, they're using that kind of a hammer-on back and forth, so they're using that shape and then this at the same time. So they're using the diminished scale. That's that sound that you hear in the really chaotic death metal, and these technical guys, again, I'm not taking anything away from them. They've got incredible prowess and everything, but when you're learning these licks and you're really developing them up to speed, they do have a little bit of something to fall back on, and that they're using the same fingerings and positions all the time. So, if you get better at doing just that scale, you get better at the entire genre. It is to technical death metal what the blues scale is to blues music. It's the core foundation and sound of it. So this can help take a lot of mystery out of it. You can really get inside of it and be able to start recognize those patterns when you see these really rapid kind of minor third movements, or the, you know, really chaotic type of arpeggio work and things like that. You know they're using that diminished scale, and when you hear when they make wide jumps across the strings, I guarantee they're working inside that pattern. Like if you go back to the Archspire example that I tagged, when I went through that, I had a hard time finding anything in it that wasn't exactly diminished. The other thing that this does is that it takes a bit of the weight out of composing things, because if you're always playing diminished, it doesn't have a root, and you don't have to relate it to anything else, so you can basically just make up riffs in any key and any position that you feel that you like, because it's so atonal. One part's just going to go with another because you don't have anything to hold on to. There's no resolved sound. So anywhere you want to play diminished, it's going to work. It's, you know, disorienting to the ear enough that you can get away with just playing it all over the neck. So that is one thing that they, you know, kind of have in their pocket that allows them to just shred through things, and they just practice diminished arpeggios, diminished scales, and working inside those patterns. Now, I guarantee if you go and look at the Archspire example, you're going to see it all over. Diagonal hand placements, that's, you know, them doing the type of arrangements, a lot of this minor third hand movement, and it's shifting. That's one of the big keys that you know what's going on, is that when they're moving strings, you'll see that kind of diagonal movement. That tells you they're getting away with that kind of diminished movement. Now, one alteration that goes with this, and because the fingering is basically just a mirror inversion of it, is sometimes they'll use the whole tone scale. The whole tone is basically, if you think of diminished as a rootless minor scale, a whole tone is a rootless major scale in a way. It's based on all whole steps. It's another form of symmetrical scale, and you use the same principle, but you do whole steps. So say like 3, 5, 7, 4, 6, 8, 5, 7, 9. So you'll see it a lot when they kind of invert things, because it's just a similar fingering. Like say you go up and diminished, then you might reverse and go down in a whole tone arpeggio. You'll hear a lot of that really chaotic, rootless type of sound. It's just because they're basically doing this with the hand and then inverting it. Again, it works with it because it's another rootless, disorienting type of scale. So the two of them combined, whole tone isn't used as much, but you will hear it in there. You'll see this in, I mean, just about every single song. I saw a massive amount of content. I was really pressed to find anything that wasn't almost exclusively diminished. Usually the time that they'll switch from diminished is when they start to slow down, or if they want to sound more melodic and less kind of, you know, really horrifyingly dissonant and everything all the time. But because the diminished has the darkest notes available, the flat 5, the flat 2, and you can basically toss it all around the neck, it lends to that constant chaos and dissonant sound. So if you want to start training, learning to write this stuff and getting your hands around it, just start getting on that diminished symmetrical scale. Learn it, and it doesn't matter what positions you're playing it in, because you're just going to be rootless anyway. Really start getting it under your hand, and then you'll start recognizing the sound of it. And when you're watching these guys trying to play things, you're going to be able to, one, identify it by seeing what they're playing. Oh, I can see the hand position because they're very distinct looking, you know, all the diagonal kind of movements and things. And the other is you'll just start to learn that kind of dark, jarring, really floating sense of no resolution, you'll know that it's diminished. And that's really the key to it. It's developing simple ideas based on one scale, but learning to do them incredibly fast. So all your sweeps are going to be diminished, all of your riffs are going to be diminished, all of your, harmonies will be diminished. It's just really learning that scale and learning to work within it as fast as you can, and then getting your chops up to speed. So that's kind of the compromise that's being made there, is rather than a variety of sound and a variety of scales or different tones or things, they've traded that in for a platform that gives them a single ominous sound. And then they work incredibly hard on mastering technique. That one scale contains all the dissonance that they want, so all they have to do at that point is master the techniques and become faster and faster at it. So it's a really athletic approach to music where they're not going to be stretching any of the tonalities out that far. And now I know you're going to be tempted to, oh, well, there's this one band that does this, or there's always going to be examples of exceptions. But the overwhelming majority, this is what's going on. Now, on top of that, one of the advantages to it also that this makes out is that your practice routine becomes all about technique. Once you've learned that scale, you've kind of done your job. You don't have much more to experiment with or to memorize. Now, as far as thinking about this, when you go and approach any form of music, try and take the approach I just did to analyze technical death metal. There's usually a vocabulary in it that if you stop being intimidated by the music and step back, you'll be able to start figuring it out. I find the same commonalities in a lot of jazz and funk players, that there's a very specific phrasing. There's certain scales they like to use over certain chords, and that there's almost melodies that you just keep hearing over and over. There's a vocabulary there. If you can kind of step back and analyze from how can I condense this into a couple of small rules that basically govern the genre, then it takes a lot of the mystery out of it, and you can attack it much quicker, much more efficiently. You can transcribe easier, figure out the songs, and you can start writing in that genre way faster and getting your head around it. I've never run into a genre of music where I couldn't kind of identify what the founding principles of it were within a couple of minutes. Metal has its basic things inside of like part blues scale and pieces of diminished. Then you've got, pop music has basically the major scale with some, very limited minor pieces in it. Every sound has its go-to elements. So technical death metal, ironically, is one of the easier to figure out just because it uses extremely limited options, but does it in a way that involves incredible physical prowess. So if you want to get into this type of music, know that your vocabulary doesn't have to be very big. Your chops have to be from hell, though, quite literally. So if you've noticed any other tendencies or things, hit me up below and let me know some interesting pieces and things. And tell me if after analyzing some of the tech death things that are out there that you're used to looking at, if you don't start to hear these pieces I'm talking about, or watching the Archspire things or the Cannibal Corpse, you don't identify it and you can kind of see those diagonal movements and those minor thirds and how repetitive it is, that suddenly that there's, a little key for the door there. And now you see how often it's used and what a staple that diminished scale is to that entire genre. So let me know what you think on that, and I'll see you in the comments below. Now, as a quick and short gear follow-up, I mentioned in one of the patron streams some stuff about preamps, and I get questions about them a lot, so I wanted to give a short piece where I went into it a little bit more in depth on the live stream, but a short piece for some other random followers and things, or people just checking out the channel. The difference in between preamps and exactly what they do. Onboard preamps on an instrument, like the one I have here, where you see, a number of knobs and a number of options. If you have an actual preamp in it, there are different kinds and different brands, but there's two fundamental things that they're doing, and this is the big thing to understand about them. Some preamps have a color of their own, meaning that when they're active and you've got them on board, it is always coloring your sound. There's no flat position where it's just the raw sound of your pickups and no other sound going on, that they have a certain color that they add even when you're not EQing. Then you have other ones that are flat, meaning that they're basically just an EQ, that your pickups aren't altered in sound in any way until you start turning the EQs and either boosting the mids or, adding lows or whatever that is. So you have ones that are colored, ones that are uncolored. That's the principal difference. When a lot of people ask me about the recommendations for them, I find that usually there's two schools, and the major brands of it being like EMG, all of their preamps are basically uncolored. Some people say they can hear a little bit of a difference. I've never heard it. I've used a number of theirs. Great quality preamps, but they are less what I would actually call a preamp. They're more of an EQ. That, to me, a preamp, just the terminology of it, kind of says that there should be some color, some kind of character to it. So I consider the EMG preamps more of an EQ system. Now, other brands like, say, Aguilar or Bartolini or something like that, they have a color to them. They're going to have a certain tonal character that does something to your pickups all the time, and you need to find out what that is ahead of time to find out if that's what you want. The biggest thing that I recommend is that if you get a preamp that has color, either request it with this option or get it so that you get an A/B test directly so you can hear what it's going to do to your sound. Try and get either an A/B switch, an active-passive switch, or a push-pull pot so you can shut off the preamp and take it out of the circuit. That way, if you don't want the color of that preamp all the time, you can bypass it. If you can't and you don't like the coloration, it's on all the time, or you may only want the coloration at certain times. So like with the bass I just showed you in the 6-string, that one has an Aguilar preamp in it, which to me really complements the EMGs. It does a really nice coloration and it's on all the time. I was glad in this one that it had a bypass so I could go back and forth and hear the difference between the two. Any preamp of Aguilar that I put in my basses, I'm always going to have that cutoff so I can make sure I like the sound of what it's doing and be able to, keep referencing the raw tone. But that to me is a big deal. So I really recommend, either getting a bypass switch or something if your preamp has a natural color. But if you get something from somewhere like EMG or something, it's just going to be an EQ basically, and it's not going to alter the fundamental tone. So those are the really big things to understand about preamps and how they work, and make your choice accordingly. If you're going to be shooting somewhat blind, make sure you get that bypass switch so that you can always go back to your original tone if you think you just want that. So that's going to wrap up this Metal Bass Monday. Hit me down below if you play technical death metal, if you notice some of the things that I said or you're already aware and if this has helped you out transcribing some of the stuff. And if you have video clips of you playing some of this really over-the-top stuff, let's see it, man. That stuff is impressive. I'd love to see what you guys are up to with it, or if it's influenced your playing at all. There's guys like, Beyond Creation, Archspire stuff. They're doing amazing stuff. So if you're in that type of band, I'd love to see it and see what you can do. And please drop over to the Facebook group, especially, link down below, and share it with the rest of the group and let us see what you're doing. And if you're one of my patrons and you want to jump on the Discord channel and pop some stuff up there that we can talk about and toss ideas back and forth, let's have at it. I love seeing the community get together, and you guys are obviously helping each other out, and I love that. So thanks as always for watching. I hope you got something out of this, and I will see you on the Discord and see you in the comments below. I'll see you in the next one. Wait! Don't go! You never know. Moments like this are crucial. The next video you watch could change your life. And it might be this one, or even this one. Are you willing to take that chance? I don't know. Check them out.